Because who gives a shit? Dad did hedge funds and I don't have to do anything. So how do you traverse that?
The way that I think about it is they want to do better than whatever goalpost was set for them.
It's all narrativized stories from Evil Mike. Well, they're both narrativizing right now. I don't think he's, again, I don't know if Mike said anything I disagree with. Sometimes I feel like he leans a little bit too hard into a point, but I don't think Evil Mike has said anything I disagree with at all.
You know,
why are you calling him good and evil Mike? I don't know. He looks like an evil Mike, and the other guy looks like a good Mike. So there's good and evil Mike.
We're speaking of tropes. Daddy didn't love me because he thought he was more successful than me, so I'm going to outdo him.
Oh yeah, sure, okay, oh yeah. But this guy keeps bringing up all my counter arguments. I should just like play his arguments, I guess.
Or my dad started a $1 billion company. I want to make a $10 billion company.
Sure.
I think that motivation still exists for that individual.
Definitely. But it also, I think, works the other way, where people who have seen close to the bottom really don't like to be close to the bottom.
Like, I feel like he's arguing this, but he wouldn't believe this in the aggregate, right? Because if that was the case, then poverty or adverse childhood experiences would be the biggest motivator for people to succeed. And they're clearly not. They're clearly negative for you in the aggregate, right?
And they're maybe less likely to be lazy about things and just let it ride.
Sure,
So
but how much do connections matter? Like coming to America for
almost
us.
not at all.
Come on, that's complete nonsense.
Almost not at all.
Come on, that's complete nonsense. I'll even give you a practical, simple takeaway from it. Moving to America, not having a connection for a plumber, a car repair person, a dentist, versus someone who has all that, and then that frees them up to have the time to work.
I don't think when people talk about connections, I don't think they're usually talking about having a dentist and a oil change guy, but
more, to achieve more, to have the buddy-buddy relationship of a grant going their way is an inherent advantage.
Yeah.
So how can we say that it's not?
Yeah, it's short-term advantage. It definitely makes things easier in the short term for you.
I don't know if he's going to say this. I'm just pausing to say things that they end up saying anyway. I think what connections do for you is connections create opportunities. Now, whether or not you can seize the opportunity is up to you, but connections just create more opportunities. So it's possible that a person with no connections maybe was a person who could have succeeded, but they just never had the opportunity in life to do so, whereas a person with a lot of connections will have a lot of opportunities. So if they're poised to do well, they'll have the opportunity to do well, right?
But usually that stuff doesn't last. So if you have somebody who's been connected into business, like dad was in the industry, said, hey, hire my son, you know, that sort of thing.
Sure, nepotism.
Business is ruthless. I don't give a fuck who you're related to. If you're related to dad and he said, hire you, I'll hire you. You don't perform and your stock trading isn't up to standard, I'm going to hire some dude from China that's a fucking merc. And he doesn't give a fuck. And I don't know him. I don't know his parents.
There's so much nepotism. There's so many people who are terrible at their jobs at the highest levels.
Yeah.
Probably not. Unfortunately, people don't like to hear this, and it sounds bad, but that's probably not true. There probably aren't a ton of people that are really bad at their jobs at the highest levels, because if that was true, those companies would be gone, and other more efficient companies with better performers would probably come in. The reality is, and this is the same answer that you give to people that obsess over fucking DEI and obsess over fucking affirmative action. People view qualified individuals like this, okay? To where, like, qualified are like, it moves like this. This guy's more qualified, and this guy's more qualified, and this guy's more qualified. And like, this is the most qualified dude right here. And we could go with this guy, but he's a little bit less qualified. We could go with this guy, and then they got people down here. But the reality is qualifications for jobs probably look something more more like this, like more like a step function, where it's like, okay, this guy can do that, and like these people, and like there's people that are like way more clustered around, you know, these types of levels, rather than, you know, this like continual linearly increasing function of like slightly more qualified people all along this scale. Probably just like, so a lot of people that are nepotistic, or they probably are good enough for the job and they fit in the bucket and that's it. And like, there's going to be there's going to be like a decent amount of wiggle room where a much better performer is probably not going to do that much better of the job because there's not much room for it. Like, it's probably on the aggregate, that's how it goes.
Many, but it's much rarer than you may think. And there are also so many people at the highest levels that are just good. And over time, especially the free market, now government's slightly different, but the free market, private institutions.
I always tell people that job interviews are just a measure of how annoying it would be to work with you. If you aren't good, it's annoying. If you're an asshole, it's annoying. Yeah, like at job interviews, like they're not, like even at places like Google or Amazon, they're not trying to figure out like, I think that in a high stress fucking coding environment where Jeff Bezos has demanded a new product, we have to deliver this by Friday. I need the guy that can code this in 4.5 minutes instead of the guy that can code it in 4 minutes and 45 seconds. I need a guy who's memorized every single fucking possible library and every single fucking blah, blah. Like, it's more just like, yeah, like these people, they have about equivalent skills. This guy seems autistic as fuck and doesn't seem like he showers. This other dude told a funny joke. I want the guy that told the funny joke in because he's going to be way better to work with. It's probably more like that, right? Like I don't know if there's any job on the aggregate of the U.S. where people are like, this guy is like a 2% improvement in skill over this guy. Like, probably not. It's probably buckets of qualified people for jobs.
People at the highest levels that are just good. And over time, especially the free market, now government's slightly different, but the free market, private institutions, private companies grotesquely over-reward capability versus anything else.
Grotesquely over-reward capability. Again, I feel like he's just a little, like, I don't believe that there are all of these totally incompetent nepotistic losers because I just think that they would be weeded out. It wouldn't make a lot of money. You would be fine. It'd be bad business. But grotesquely over-reward capability, I don't know if I would agree with that. I guess I don't really have like a factual foundation to fight it on. That just intuitively feels wrong, but I don't agree.
You ever been inside Google, and no offense to anyone, all jokes, all love and respect, Google, all the companies associated with that tech sphere, bro, it's like 1/2 of the nation of India. Is there some kind of thing where people just love Indians at tech companies? No, they're fucking mercs, dude. They're fucking good. They're just good. And like, I'm going to hire people that are good. And it's also, we like to hold two thoughts in our heads at the same time about, you know, the myth of the, maybe not myth, the exaggerated form of the greedy capitalist. It's both a nepotistic asshole and a greedy asshole.
But you can't be greedy and nepotistic at the same time because your business wouldn't make money if you were only doing favors for family members. You'd be losing money. So you're not, yeah.
Nepotism and greed don't work very well together because if I'm greedy enough, I don't need you, my son, working for my company because you're flubbing. I need Garaj Patel working for my company because he fucking comes in at 6 in the morning. I don't think he ever leaves. His portfolio looks like someone make believe it into existence. I want to get this guy. Who is the current, was it CEO of Microsoft or is it Google?
The only difference, though, that I would say is, so the thing I would be, fuck, am I being reductionist on everything? I don't think I am. The only thing I would say, though, is so where I just said that employees probably don't work like this. It's probably more like a stepladder function. Nepotism can exist here because my guess is going to be that success for most businesses is also probably like a stepladder function. So let's say that you have a guy who's making $150,000 a year as a small business owner, doing pretty good. Small business owner, you net $150,000 a year from your business. Let's say that you could hire one of those mercs and he could make your business $180,000 a year instead of $150,000 a year. You might prefer to keep your son hired over hiring a guy that would be better at the job. Because nepotistically, you prefer to pay your son $50,000 a year than to pay some random Indian dude $60,000 a year who could make you even more money because it's your son. Fuck it, you know? So nepotism could exist in this way as well. And that, like, I don't know if a small business owner especially is looking to optimize every single part of his business to be the most optimal income earning generating machine ever. It's probably not true. At the highest levels, probably true, right? I don't know if Google and Amazon are hiring, you know, like Sun Google and Sun Amazon to work in these huge positions. They're probably a lot more cutthroat. But for the majority of businesses in America, they probably aren't like ultra optimizing that much, you know?
Who leaves? His portfolio looks like someone make believe it into existence. I want to get this guy. Who is the current, was it CEO of Microsoft or is it Google? One of the guys is like an Indian dude, right?
Yeah, I think.
Where'd he come from? Where was his advantage?
Funny how Destiny has never worked in a corporate office. Ross G_G. If you want to say something I'm wrong about, feel free to say it instead of typing whatever random shit you are from your imaginary world as a 19-year-old who's a freshman in college for insert whatever major you want to make fun of here.
I've seen, anecdotally speaking, the practical version of what you're saying is you're the greedy asshole that hires his son, who's inept, and benefits from the hard labor of the Indian dude without paying them fairly. I think that's the more reality
of what
a greedy person
is. Smarter than all of you, and the Indian dude gets a startup going, and he crushes you and buys out your company.
don't think it always necessarily works that way, but
How often do we see that happening?
All the time.
I feel like the big companies that have been in power are still in power. The blue chip companies.
Google was founded by a Russian immigrant in the 90s.
Yeah, this is during a period of transition of new technology, of a new industry being.
on a scale of 1 to 10, how relevant do you think your experience working at a casino in Nebraska 20 plus years ago is to any modern workplace? I think there are probably a lot of things in a workplace that probably never change. There are probably always shitty bosses. There are probably always shitty coworkers, and I guarantee you there are always shitty customers. There are some rules of service work that have probably been the same fucking since the very first caveman opened a store and tried to sell a rock to an entitled fucking customer, okay?
During a period of transition of new technology, of a new industry being formed, as opposed to an old industry being taken over.
So which industries are the ones that are like the old boys? still?
Disney.
Oh, Mike has Evil Mike has a killer argument if he wants to go full libertarian here. Will he see it? So Dr. Mike here, good Mike, brings up Disney as an example of an old boys company. If Evil Mike wanted to fight from a libertarian perspective, you go, you know what, I agree, Disney is a problem. But why do you think Disney is able to protect their old money so much? Because of government regulation. In a libertarian free market world, Disney wouldn't exist. It's the government and their rent-seeking behavior that allows them to entrench themselves so much.
Over.
So which industries are the ones that are like the old boys? still?
Disney.
Disney's not an industry. Disney's one company.
Well, Disney.
Well, is that true? I feel like Disney is the movie industry. What percentage of box office sales went to Disney 2023? In 2023, Disney alone accounted for over 1/4 of the box office revenue in the U.S. and Canada. Not as high as I thought. Still, it's a lot though. 25%. Jesus. In 2023, these people say 16.2%. Behind Universal. Oh, I wonder why it's different here.
Disney's industry is media, it's amusement parks, it's entertainment,
Sure.
sports. You don't see brilliant engineers taking over sports teams.
You think the profit margin on sports teams is
Huge.
is it
For the ownership of sports teams, is it though? It wouldn't surprise me if it's actually not that big and people buy them as this is my passion project play money thing. But I'm curious. I don't know. How much do NBA team owners profit? I have no idea. Am I just not? Can I just never Google a thing anymore? Is it never gonna? How much do NBA team owners profit? Is it not precise? Do we have to go to page 2? Oh, how much money does an NBA franchise make on average? Let's try this. I think the NBA is private, so I don't think you can find numbers on it. There's nothing publicly listed for any. Oh well. Wow, Rob, see, thanks for the tier 5 subber. Okay, don't know, don't care. All right.
Is the margin huge or is the revenue?
The valuation is huge of change.
Sure.
That's the real value.
Sure.
And nowadays you can't buy a sports team. It is now firms that are run by the same 10 people that are buying sports teams.
10 people is not, so I'd say 10 people are probably ruthlessly competitive against each other.
Sure.
It's a very competitive landscape. Another thing is, to the point of behavioral genetics, one of the reasons that nepotism actually still can be tracked statistically is because nepotism on average works. Because if you're a real smart dad and you had a great company, yeah, your son might suck relative to everyone else at the company because they're all studs. But compared to the average person, your son's a killer. And so over time, I think you see this effect that can be labeled as purely nepotistic. But in reality, we're just tracing the effects of behavioral genetics. Like people related to really smart, really capable people are on average smarter and more capable than everybody else. And so a huge degree of nepotism can be accounted just sheerly based on that. And over long historical trends, nepotism has a way of not working out so well because private enterprise does not care about nepotism. So like the Paul brothers, I don't know which one of them made the Prime drink. You know, the Prime
Logan.
drink, sugar water, Logan Paul.
This is like probably broadly true, but maybe a little bit too strong of a statement. But I probably broadly agree with this. Like really intelligent people probably tend to have really intelligent kids, so it makes sense that they're probably going to work with you if they want to go into a similar line of work. Like I wouldn't say that a hire is purely nepotistic just because it's like a family member. So like, cut the stream, August, don't show this. So like, for instance, like Hassan, we joke and we insult him as being a Nepo baby or whatever, but like Hassan is good at what he does. Did he have the opportunity to work for those companies because of nepotism? Yeah, sure. Nepotism presented the opportunity, but it's not like he's only there because of nepotism. He's more popular than anybody else, arguably, who came from the Young Turks. No, I wouldn't say that actually, right? Because Dave Rubin and a whole bunch of other crazy people came from there. But like, it's obvious that there's like a lot of work and everything as well. So maybe there's just a Turkish gene pool of politically entertaining people in that family. But
It's not sugar water, actually. It's
non-sugar
artificial sugar water.
Sweet tasting water with electrolytes and
Right.
stuff. So
Whose brother just attacked me 2 days ago, actually.
attacked and physically?
Social media.
Oh my God, even worse.
Yeah.
Well, good. You had it coming. And what was the attack about? Now I'm curious.
He called me a book thumping sheep doctor.
What does mean sheep doctor? Oh, like sheep.
He
like
judged me for
like-
reading books, I guess.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, not big on the thinking that man. Very well.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't think we would have like middle school level bullying in adulthood, but here we are.
I found it interesting. Like if you were
What did you say that made him upset? I'm sure he didn't reach out for no reason. at all.
Politico posted that President Trump wrote that he wants to hire RFK for HHS, and he confirmed it. And I wrote, "It's a sad day for us in healthcare,"
I see.
and he took offense to that.
Politics makes the mind go a little crazy at times. Yeah, book reading is good, makes you smarter. So on
Well,
and so
apparently
forth.
not. Apparently
Apparently
makes
not.
you a sheep doctor.
Sure.
And he said I was indoctrinated.
Yeah,
But the doc was in quotes.
Lots of indoctrination going around. I assume he probably mislabeled you, but lots of indoctrination. So you got to take the good with the bad. But I digress.
Yeah. So you're saying the Paul brothers.
The Prime drink. It just tastes really good, man.
You like it?
without nepotism, anyone would be there instead of him and do a better job easily. Wait, versus who? What?
But lots of indoctrination. So you got to take the good with the bad. But I digress.
Yeah. So you're saying the Paul brothers.
The Prime drink. It just tastes really good, man.
You like
Just
it?
I don't particularly like it. I think it's fine. It's not
So
my
how are you
favorite.
saying it tastes good?
Everyone I've ever talked to around me says it's amazing. And
Really?
they like absolutely.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
like they're
feel like it's
making
been split.
Yeah, sure. It's like so it tastes good enough for lots of people to buy it.
Right.
And there are no
Talking about Hassan? Without nepotism, anyone would be there instead of him and do a better job easily. You're just wrong. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. You're just completely, totally incorrect in that. Like, what?
Pepsi Cola hardliners left to defend Pepsi's enterprise. If something's better, people just buy it. Tesla with Elon Musk.
What do you mean? RFK just tweeted that he's going to remove high fructose corn syrup in Coca-Cola and put cane sugar in it, and that's going to fix our problem.
Thank God. Finally, someone looking out for the people.
I mean, like, come on, like, if we're talking about science.
Yeah. So
And hold on, the whole RFK situation, isn't that the prime example of terrible nepotism in success?
I don't think RFK is a nepotistic thing. I think RFK just really like connects with people in a really simple and plain way.
Mike, come on.
I'm dead serious.
Yeah,
like,
but how
people
did
seem
he?
to like? There's lots
There's
of
a
other
lot of
Kennedys which are
dudes-
really annoying and people
There's a
hate.
lot of RFKs walking around right now that are not in the level of where he is simply because of his family.
What do you think his family did for him to help him out specifically?
Gave him the
Money.
last name Kennedy.
Like, what did he use the money
Oh,
for?
maybe
How
that's
did
it.
he use the money to become famous?
How did he?
Where did he go to school? Graduated from Harvard University and the University of Virginia School of Law. Ouch. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not ouch. That was mean. I'm just kidding. I'm sure that helped. No?
He run his presidential campaign? How did he get media? How did he
You
hire
think he used
PR?
private Kennedy money for that?
Of course.
I thought it was fundraising.
He lived. Well, yeah. How do you get fundraisers? How do you get attention? How do you create people to want to pay attention to you?
Sure, born famous. I guess just because you're a Kennedy, it's real tough.
Oh, never mind. Hold on. I had no fucking idea about this at all. I'm sorry. I just looked this up. University of Virginia is the 4th ranking law school in the country. What have I heard of for is it T6? Is that what they say? Columbia, I think New York University, I think Harvard and Yale. I don't remember what the other ones are. I didn't know that Virginia was so highly ranked. Never mind. That's good then. Okay. I was going to Harvard for your Harvard is a really, really good law school. I think like fights for rank 1 or 2. Hold on. I'm just kidding. 4. Fuck, whatever. I don't go to law school. I don't know this shit. Fuck me. Okay, rank 4. What's number 1? You know what? Hold on. Law school rankings. Fuck everything. Wait, I just thought that Virginia was number 4, though. No, wait, hold on. Okay. Stanford is 1. Yale is 2. University of Chicago is 3. Duke is 4. Harvard is 5. University of Pennsylvania is 6. Virginia, Columbia, New York University, Northwest. Wait, is this... They change every year? Okay, whatever. Top 10 law school. Sorry. Anyway, when people say that they went to Harvard, I'm pretty sure, like 65% sure. When people say they went to Harvard or they brag about going to Harvard, they mean that like they went to Harvard for, or at least for a lawyer, that they went to Harvard for law. They went to Harvard Law School. Not that you got your undergrad at Harvard. I don't know if, I'm sure there are some disciplines where the undergrad at Harvard is like reputable. Maybe what, like poli-sci, or I don't know. What's like who went to Harvard? I'm sure there are, math, maybe math. Do you just do an undergrad in math? You don't do graduate level work in math? But if you were to go to Harvard for an undergrad and then you would go to like a rank 50 or whatever law school, you wouldn't say that like, oh, I went to Harvard. You probably would hide the fact you went to Harvard, would be my guess. But.
To get a lot of things going behind you. I think he has some special qualities. I think he comes off as...
Oh my God. Fuck, I just had the worst fucking nightmare in the world. If RFK were to push for cane sugar in Coke instead of high fructose corn syrup, I feel like we actually would see a reduction in things like obesity, and it would be better for America. And people would think it's because high fructose corn syrup is bad for you. But in actuality, it would just be because it's a sugar tax, because cane sugar is more expensive than high fructose corn syrup. So he would do like a retarded policy, but it would end up working because it would just make it more expensive, and then people would consume less of it. And people are like, oh my God.
Pay attention to.
Sure, born famous. I guess just because you're a Kennedy, it's real tough to get a lot of things going behind you. I think he has some special qualities. I think he comes off as incredibly genuine when he's conversing, which is super important. He doesn't have that Hillary Clinton, that Illuminati stare where you're like, there's no one in there, is there?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah,
that you're explaining.
people seem to like it. And so I think that's probably mostly why. Now, obviously, the Kennedy name doesn't hurt. And nepotism in politics is
Does Destiny not believe HFCS is bad for you? I've never seen anything that shows that high fructose corn syrup is any worse for you than any other type of sugared stuff and anything. But
A much bigger deal than in economics.
Well, wait, go back to the Paul brothers of it all. I want to see
Paul
where you're
brothers.
going with that.
The prime drink is good because it's good, and people don't care. They don't care who made it. They're not trying to honor anyone's memory.
You don't? You don't think they're buying it because they want to support Logan or they love Logan or they think he's cool?
Oh, there's not.
no, I'm pretty sure that Prime product is really successful, isn't it? There's no way that anybody is that much of a fucking simp that they just buy this shit. Oh, I love it. Oh. Like it's probably a good drink. I think this is a really successful product, right? Isn't it? I feel like I've heard that. Are they making like a fuck ton of money off of this? Am I wrong? I don't drink this shit. I'm a Red Bull stan. I don't know. Okay.
I don't know if people that like him to make that economics work for like regular stores and stuff. Hell no.
You
Most of the
think
people that buy
random
Prime
people
drinks-
that are going in to buy Prime
yeah.
that made it what it is don't know who Logan Paul is?
Oh my God, tons. Yeah, I barely know who
Really?
Logan Paul is. I think him is was a brother named Jake or something like
Yeah.
that. I couldn't pick him. I couldn't tell him apart.
I mean, like almost 100 million people watch Jake fight Mike Tyson.
I mean, I watch a lot of shows with lots of famous people. I don't go running to buy their drink all the damn time.
Yeah.
Here's the
Right,
thing,
because
if their
social
drink-
media creates a parasocial
Yes,
relationship, which is much stronger.
If their drink sucked, and maybe it's not that great, and maybe time will tell, no one gives a shit. No one's buying your drink because it sucks. You can say you like a bunch of stuff. You're not going out of your way to drink a shitty drink. You might do it once or twice. Like,
Yeah,
oh, I
that's
really
just-
wanted to
yeah.
like Jake Paul's drink. Didn't work out. If it's good, it's good. And over the long term, people who are able to innovate and create great things rise to the top of the ability to have great wealth and influence. And it doesn't happen quickly in all places, but in a relatively more free economy like that of the United States, it happens at a substantial rate. So while nepotism is still a thing, over the long term, nepotism is really difficult to hold on to unless there's an aggregate effect of nepotism actually making better products and services for people, which is why when you run a Fortune 500 company and your ass
If you made a successful drink, you'd assume it wasn't because your audience of thousands of fans didn't influence that? No, you could probably sell like 1 or 2 drops of it, but you wouldn't have success in the long term. I don't think people would continue to consume shitty stuff just because you're trying to sell it to them.
is on the line for how the stock does, nepotism becomes a really faint whisper. If someone's like, Google had a bad year, and someone in Google's like, hey, you need to hire my son, the board is going to be like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, we need killers. We need people to turn this thing around. When everyone's ass is on the line, nepotism becomes a cruel joke. And what people really want is raw, ruthless, greedy capitalism, people that can make stuff happen. And over the long term, that means that most of the people that can make stuff happen end up being a real smorgasbord of individuals, most of whom don't have nepotism. You look at all the best people in industry around New York, San Francisco, LA, bro, it's a goddamn rainbow out here. Like I straight up have a policy of hiring as many Nigerians as possible, as I've yet to meet a Nigerian that's not amazing at everything. I don't know. They're very distantly genetically related to me. I don't care. They're just awesome.
What do you
And
take?
so-
What do you take away from the fact that most family businesses fail after 2 or 3 generations? I forgot what the exact.
Nepotism's not that
Probably just most businesses in general fail, right?
great then, huh?
Well, the
I think
question.
most businesses in general fail within several
Yeah.
years. So I'm not sure how to put that statistic in line with the family statistic. You know what I
because
mean?
I think about nepotism and how it demotivates, but those people still have generational wealth that continues to earn them money. So I don't know, but let's move on off the nepotism topic because I do want to discuss about the topic that you brought up, obesity,
Yes.
and how it's impacted by perhaps genetics, social standing, and I've had tons of conversations about this with food industry experts, food political people. Just last week, it's not public yet, but we had an interview with a bariatric surgeon who's a director of the NYU bariatric program here, endocrinologists to talk about GLP-1 medications, and they all kind of have a slightly different take on all of it. So I'm curious what your take is.
Well, they're all wrong. I'm just the smartest
Obviously, you're Dr. Mike.
and the most
There's
handsome.
What is
no
bariatric?
Dr.
Is that
Mike.
like stomach
when
stuff?
you arrive at the Dr. Mike status, you're just that's nepotism.
Yeah, that's done.
Right? Like, get on in here. Enjoy the wealth. So
Oh, bariatric
this
is
has
for
been a
fat
passion of
stomach.
mine for a long time
Uh-oh.
because I'm a an astute, dilettante, delusional, recreational student of economics.
There's a lot of verbiage. I failed SAT.
Excellent.
I can't keep up
Excellent.
with that.
Same. So I just made up a few words. And I have been.
I super don't believe that. I bet this motherfucker got a 1500 plus on the SAT. Seriously, though, why do none of those reasons apply to Trump? Does it make him actually good because the people voted for him? Or is it possible that a product can succeed or grifty manipulation? I think it's simply the letter. What are you talking about? A popularity contest is not the same as like market forces. I don't know what you're saying.
And poorer than almost every American because I'm from the Soviet Union. It's a level of poverty that is difficult to comprehend. I was high on edible marijuana one day, and I had this revelation that back when I was younger, and still to this day, I have like an odd nostalgia for the 50s in the United States. Yeah, see, you know, like the good old days.
Mad Men.
That kind of shit. And
He's talking about his brands, like his steaks and NFTs and shit. I think most of the Trump brands are pretty shitty, no? The only thing he really succeeded in was his most successful brand is probably entertainment, would be my guess, like his Apprentice show, right?
I was like, you know, I think I figured out maybe why. It's because in the 1980s in the Soviet Union, we were kind of economically a similar.
You were saying that Prime isn't a popularity contest or that popularity contests anyways aren't extremely relevant. I'm saying that I'm sure that you could use popularity to start a thing, but I doubt you could keep a thing going off of just popularity. Like if a thing is massively successful, then it's probably because there's something to it that people like. I don't think you can just force a thing like that.
Level as the 1950s in the United States.
Do you think the SAT has a strong G factor? I'm pretty sure. SAT and AC, I'm pretty sure most standardized testing is heavily G loaded. And I'm sure the MCAT is as well. That's why I don't believe that you got a low SAT score. I'm sure you got a very high SAT score.
It was like, you know, I think I figured out maybe why. It's because in the 1980s in the Soviet Union, we were kind of economically a similar level as the 1950s in the United States.
Maybe
So I
not
asked-
even so.
Bro, exactly. I asked ChatGPT and it's like, it's usually really polite. And it was slightly less polite and more like, God, no. The Soviet Union in the 1980s was like America in the 1910s or
Yeah,
something.
that's
And I
what
was
I
like,
was
oh
about
my
to say.
God. So that was thrown out entirely. So
Do you really think Logan Paul had shit to do with any of Prime business side, scientific / ingredient side, etc.? What do you think my answer to that is? Think about it.
you know, levels of poverty to where like people say like, there's people say like I'm struggling to eat, and you look at them and they have a BMI of 35, and you're like, that can't possibly be true in a way that you're describing it that's linear. But back in the Soviet Union, like yes, like getting food was by no means clear a thing that you were able to do every day. So then you know I had all these experiences growing up, and then I was taught later in various schools.
I'm not interested in arguing against this, and I don't even want. I'm just not interested. With foods and drinks, I disagree. Literally, just add sugar, and you will cultivate an audience. Probably the hardest part is getting the brand on the shelves. Okay, if you think that, then okay.
School programs that poverty was a cause of obesity, and
Destiny, well, you're accepting his argument that the success of Prime has anything to do with Logan Paul. What? No, I'm saying that the success of the drink is probably because people relatively like the drink, assuming it continues to succeed, right? I don't even know. It's only existed for like 2 years, right? I don't know. Maybe it falls off in a year or two. I know that this year was worse than last year for him. So who knows? Maybe it won't succeed, but it can't succeed alone on just people liking the guy, right? There has to be some, like the actual product itself.
programs that poverty was a cause of obesity. And, you know, I had all these experiences growing up, and then I was taught later in various school programs that poverty was a cause of obesity.
Yes, which for people to like the drink is scientific, aka Logan Paul had zero impact on that. Okay.
And I found that to be baffling, and I've been trying to digest it ever since.
Okay.
And I have been perusing various fields of literature to try to align my ideas on the subject, and I've come away with some maybe take-home
You mean to
points
prove
in
yourself
some
right.
sense. And to prove not just to prove myself right, but to give me that feeling inside that, fuck, I just got it all figured out. You know, me,
A little
me.
cognitive reassurance.
Generally, I just stare at a picture of myself, and that's good enough. But sometimes ideas get in
Fair.
there. So I didn't like everything I found out. So the following is heavily caveated to say I mean it all in the best possible way. Don't kill the messenger sort of situation.
We're going to kill you. Don't worry.
Oh God, there's a few people in the studio. Which one is it coming from? So as long as I'm sacrificed for Big Pharma, all is well.
Deal.
And here's kind of how it looks to me. the typical argument or arguments for poverty causing obesity, if you ask a next level of questions about them, things start to fall apart.
This whole conversation is going to be, does poverty lead to obesity? And then Evil Mike is going to say, there's actually a trait that influences both of these things. Here we go.
Level one of questions is like, how do people with more resources with which to buy food end up buying less food?
Can I play devil's advocate on all those questions?
Absolutely, every single one, because I have many retorts to every single advocacy point you're going to
Okay, so say the first question. How do people with more resources? Sorry.
Okay, how do we go back and forth on this? This is a pretty easy one. How do people with more resources spend less on food? Because the type of food that they buy is, in general, probably healthier. And by healthier, we mean probably less ultra processed, probably more satiating, meaning that they're going to consume less calories at a higher cost and time investment because you probably have to prepare the food, et cetera. So that would be the explanatory thing for how people with more money buy less or consume less calories, would be my guess. I don't know what his retort to that would be. That should be what Good Mike says. I don't know what Evil Mike will say here.
How do people who are wealthier seem to be consuming less of a thing that costs money than more? It is at least requires a more complicated logic. And as you know, with Occam's razor, the more complex your logic becomes, just on very carte blanche levels of thinking, it becomes less likely to be true. So if someone says, okay, you take someone from the 1600s and you go, when people get richer, they get fatter. They're like, facts. And like, just kidding. It's actually the reverse. They're going to be like, what? It is, at face value, seems to be very confusing.
Sure.
And so you have
There's
to
a lot of that in science, though.
Sure, of course. And then you have to start walking down of like, well, what are the intricacies here? And we can address all the intricacies in turn. And they start to paint a little bit of a different picture, a picture that is not super politically correct, but also can be, I think, more closely aligned with reality, because one of the big stumbling blocks in reasoning that people have on this subject is you don't want to be the person that is derisive to the poor as a social class. It's real fun to make fun of rich people. It's actively funny. It's within the Overton window.
It's safe.
It's safe.
Okay.
Not so with poor people. It's considered unbecoming.
This is true, and this is ultra fucking cringe. Like, if a poor person does some retarded shit and dies as a result of the retarded shit they do, it's like the saddest thing in the world, and we're all supposed to be infinitely compassionate and feel horrible about the event that led up to it. But like, if a rich person, through no harm or fault to literally any other person on the planet, is like, oh, I'm going to pay this guy because I want to go really deep into the ocean in a submersible, and the submersible instantaneously implodes and you and your entire family or whoever the fuck is in there dies. It's like the funniest thing in the world. I feel like that's ultra fucking cringe. But
In the same way, if you say, well, rich people exhibit XYZ qualities because it's their fault, people are like, that's right, fuck them. You say that about poor people, a lot of people don't like that because it gives them very sad feelings inside. We should not be bound by how we feel about things to be able to elucidate what is actually going on, so that in that third order, we can help everyone, including poor people, navigate difficulties better.
Sure. While that is true, you have to be careful on the other side as well. You should be able to make fun of poor people that do retarded things and die because fuck it. And you should be able to make fun of rich people that do retarded things and die because fuck it. When you say we shouldn't make fun of only rich people and never poor people because that leads to weird things, that is true. But then you also have to acknowledge that there are people that make fun of poor people because they also normatively judge them as well. And they're like, oh, they actually are worse people, and that's why I'm going to make fun of them, which is also cringe. So, I mean, you have to be careful on both ends, right? Hold on. Please, can this guy please just go away? Can this guy please just go away? Why does he does he have to be an expert in everything? Is he talking about everything? What is this?
It's really annoying when video.
Oh, cool. No volume on your dog shit video on your fucking retarded app.
It's really annoying when video game gets interrupted by some DEI woke bullshit, and I'm like, Jesus, I was playing a video game here. Can you just leave the video games alone? You know, you don't want to do things that damage art. So it breaks you out of the story. It's
Please, please just go away. Please go away.
Hello.
Hi, quickly, because I got a lot of shit to go through today. What's up?
Okay. Did you hear that The Witcher 4 is now woke because Ciri is going to be the main character?
I've seen people complaining about it, but I haven't seen the trailers.
Have you read any of the books?
Nope.
I'm not sure if she's a main character in any of the books. Regardless of that, like, if we were to just consider, like, the Witcher video game universe to be separate, I don't know what the fucking big deal is, because they kind of set up Ciri to be, you know, a main protagonist in The Witcher 3 anyway.
Yeah?
People are also complaining that she looks ugly, which she doesn't. I don't know what's going on anymore, honestly. I think there's, like, maybe there's two sides of this. Either, like, there's just a lot of dudes who don't like women in games, period, pretty much, unless they look like some, like, anime babe or something. Or they're just trying to express some, like, desire to have, like, I don't know, like a Conan type character as the main character in their video games. And, like, if anything deviates from that, especially if it's female, they're, like, just calling it woke.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, gamers being gamers, yeah.
Like, it's kind of funny, though, because people are complaining that, like, there's ugly women as the protagonist, you know, in the story. But then when there's, like, a big buff dude, it's okay.
Well, I
Kinda
think, well, isn't that
strange.
consistent?
Like, the inconsistency that I'm talking about is there needs to be, like, if there is a girl in a game, she has to be, like, fucking hot or something. But then if it's a dude, no one particularly cares.
Well, I think it's because
like,
people
there's a
tend
lot
to
of
view it
different-
as like power fantasies, right? So they want the guy to be like the
Yeah.
idealized form of the male. They want the female to be the idealized form of the female. And both of these tend to revolve around like what a man wants, right? So the idealized form of the man is going to be the biggest, buffest guy. And then the idealist version of the female is going to be the most fuckable woman. So that's what people tend to prefer when they, or at least for men, when they look at video games.
Do you think Abby from Last of Us was hot?
I never played the game, so I can't say.
Well, I mean, she's
When
the
I
buff
remember,
chick.
yeah. I think she was probably okay. I don't know if she
thought
was
she was
presented
cute.
as like a super hot character or anything, though.
Yeah, I thought she was cute.
Okay.
Not like knockout babe hot, but I don't know. A lot of people like to complain.
Sure.
All right, well, last question. If you could eliminate all poor people from the planet or all rich people from the planet, and we're not going to mix race into this, just rich and poor, which would you eliminate?
How do you define each?
Okay, let's say rich making over $300,000. Actually, no, let's make it easier. Rich earning personally over $100,000, and then poor being under that. Which would you rather eliminate?
Probably the rich.
Really?
Yeah.
I would have gone with the poor.
I think the issue is that there's going to be so many people that you eliminate at that point if you eliminate the poor, that even if you have the best, brightest, wealthiest, everybody's just going to go back to being a coal miner. You're not going to have enough people. You're not going to have enough human capital to like do anything. Unless all the rich people go and move to like one spot on the planet, there'd be like nobody left.
Yeah, that's the main reason why I would eliminate the poors. it would be kind of nice being able to have like all of humanity kind of focused around a warm area, like around the equator. And you wouldn't have to deal with traffic. Housing would literally be free. And let's face it, like just most people on the planet are fucking assholes. So if you were to eliminate just a larger subsection, you'd get rid of a lot more dickheads. And the amount of poor people who are just completely and utterly non-functioning as human beings is just fucking crazy.
Sure,
Like,
that
you
might
can
be
say
true,
what
but
you
we would
want.
literally like we would all be hunter gatherers almost again, right? Like you're eliminating like 98% of humanity. No.
No, I'd kind of disagree with that. We do have like automation technologies and stuff, and a lot of the infrastructure is already created. And given how little we'd be using it, it would be relatively easy to upkeep.
I feel like that's not true at all, but I don't know. Who knows? Okay. All right. I'm
Well-
going back to watching this. Okay.
All right, take care, dude.
I love you. Be careful. Bye.
The idea that we're going to pretend that poor people are sort of like protected against any kind of moral reasoning on our behalf, I think just needs to be discarded right up front.
Well, let's get more specific with it than talking about abstract. Like, let's say the notion of access of healthy food and the preponderance of processed food
We're going to do food deserts.
in someone's cabinet that is poor.
Sure.
Much higher likelihood to have cheaper food that is likely to be ultra processed, that is likely to create a habit of overconsumption, less satiating food,
Oh, there
and
you go.
as a
Okay.
result, potentially lead to their obesity.
What is his counter for this? He's going to say, wait, what did I say? I said there was no counter for that, right? Wealthier people are more likely to buy. Oh, I was saying as a term of like economic factor, right? You've got more money and you've got more time. You could make the same choice as a poor person as a rich person, but it would require a much higher drive to do so. You'd have to make more effort to do so than the wealthy person would. I wonder if he's going to tie back to traits again.
True or false?
True.
So then what's the retort for it?
Highly processed, convenient food is by no means the cheapest kind of food there is, not by a long shot.
It might not be cheapest in terms of raw cost, but in terms of like ease of access and time, I think it's going to be significantly ease of access, time, and like reward. I think it's going to be easily cheaper than like home cooking everything with spices and time to all that. I think, yeah.
The cheapest kind of food there is by a long.
Oh no. It's going to be rice and beans, right? Is right, or rice and beans and chicken. It'll just be rice and beans.
Long shot is largely unprocessed basic food, like bulk bought rice, not even bulk bought, any kind of white rice, canned vegetables, reduced price high fat meats, and other such products. Canned
Yeah, but like nobody wants to just eat fucking rice, right? Nobody wants to eat rice all day.
beans are almost free. Calorie per calorie and nutritional content per nutritional content, they're undefeated. There is a
How do you know that?
through looking into it substantially.
What are
Oh, wait, how do you know what? That it's cheaper or that it is higher nutritional content?
those people not doing?
Which people?
The poor people.
Oh boy, so that's its own thing. But just to finish the thought really
Yeah.
quick, the real cheapest way to get the best nutritional food is to buy those kinds of essential basics and not convenient snack foods. Personal story time. Not that this matters, just personal stories are mostly just like, oh, I'm an N of one. Just for the people that'll be like, this guy's rich, whatever. My parents were highly conscientious when we came to the United States. And the first time we had McDonald's was like 2 years into being here. And it was considered
Rice has to be prepared too. It's kind of an ass pain. I don't think that's necessarily true.
an unbelievable treat.
Yeah, same here.
Same.
Yeah.
Right. That is
Like I remember being with my dad and my friend, and I wanted a burger really badly. But I knew my dad would have to pay for a burger for my friend, and I was like, I'm not going to ask for it because I'm
Dude.
embarrassed. I don't want him to pay for it.
100%.
Yeah.
So like that clashes substantially with the conventional narrative of like, well, burgers are cheap, like compared to what? My parents and your parents were buying basics type of food, I suspect. Mine were for sure. I can't speak for you, but it seems like they were.
Yeah.
And so that already puts a little bit of a situation because people like to envision that poor people are all relatively homogenous. That's absolutely not true. We can at least bifurcate them into two categories that we did earlier.
For people in chat that are spamming about rice cookers, we don't really do rice cookers in America. I don't know why. It's just not very common. I don't know if this is true of all Hispanic people, but even as somebody that grew up in a household where even my Hispanic grandma that had that made rice all the time, we just don't have like rice cookers. Some people have it, but there are retarded American young people that have rice cookers and they think it's common, but like in the United States, like it's not even like, I think when I was in South Korea, I think every single person had a rice cooker that was literally on 24/7. Like everybody has fucking rice cookers. In the United States, they're nowhere near as common. You can spam question marks, but that's fine. I don't care what your individual fucking experience is.
Earlier, poor people of higher conscientiousness, poor people of lower conscientiousness. If you say they're all
That's
the
not
same,
the only factor.
It's
It's hard to say that's the one dividing factor.
it is probably by far the biggest dividing factor into how life outcomes occur for almost everyone, short of intelligence.
So, social experiments like the marshmallow experiment, the delayed gratification of it all, do you believe that is a signal of conscientiousness? Jesus Christ.
It took a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why has the replication of it been a disaster?
Well, that was the one like done on like 4-year-olds and shit, right?
Yeah, they had the kids come in and they tracked them for their lives to say like those who exhibited delayed gratification were able to have higher SAT scores, decreased crime rates, like basically what you're saying, that they were able to exhibit this one factor at this age, and that on the whole projected a greater success in their life, what we deem success. And then when we try to replicate that, we A, don't see that same pattern occur, and B, when we re-look at the past data, we see that the poorer kids who didn't have marshmallows just grabbed at the first marshmallow and then had lives that were in a position where they had less access to education, to proper discipline, to those things that perhaps poor kids don't have access to, then have worse outcomes. So it was like, are we really looking at the delayed gratification, or are we looking at a more systemic issue here? And that's an interesting point.
The amount of evidence for trait conscientiousness impacting human lives throughout the lifespan is like 1,000,000 times stronger than the marshmallow experiment, of which I'm not familiar with any serious behavioral geneticist that cites research to that effect for how important conscientiousness is. Psychometricians,
Would you say the same about an air fryer as you would a rice cooker in terms of what, ease of use? No, I think rice cookers are just the easiest, best thing in the universe. I mean, you can air fry food and stuff, but it's rice cookers are just absurdly simple.
behavioral geneticists, if you look up trait conscientiousness, how it expresses itself in life, the evidence for its enormous power in guiding people through their lives is overwhelming.
When do you measure it?
Say it again?
When do you measure it? And how do you measure it?
You can measure it at any point in a person's lifespan. The problem with measuring young children is that the correlation of whatever traits you have when you're very young to when you're old is actually quite low. And so, like, you know, when people have like a 4-year-old that's like, he's the genius for his age, like a lot of times that just ends up being quite regular later. He just got there earlier. But you can measure conscientiousness through a variety of behaviors in an ethnographic context. You just watch people do what they do and take very diligent notes.
Do you wash your rice before cooking, or are you a grandma? I haven't made rice in fucking forever. I think there are some types of rice you can buy that doesn't need washing, and some types of rice that does need washing. I don't know if it really matters if you wash your rice, though. Doesn't it just make it like a little bit more not crispy or chewy or something if you don't wash it? I don't know. I don't think it matters so much.
You can do it in an anthropological context. You can do it in a cultural context, studying different cultures. You can do it with a variety of validated tests like the Big Five personality, the Ocean Scale. The Ocean Scale is probably the most common one, and you can administer various tests of that nature to people of very many age ranges and situations. And they all give you a hint as to what's going on. But on aggregate, they paint a very, very similar picture overall.
So it's not the fact that there's a correlation between that trait and something else societally in their lives that's going well?
It's both, but there's a causal effect as well, because conscientious people.
How is a rice cooker different from a steamer? Looks like the same, but I'm not familiar with a rice cooker. I don't know what is a steamer. I don't know what a steamer is.
Over time, make different choices. Highly conscientious people make different choices.
You wash rice when you want to make it less starchy. Don't you want? Hold on. What is the type of starch in a rice? Fuck, I mix up. Is fiber a starch? No, it's not a starch. Are starch and fiber both non-digestible? Wait, fiber is contained in a particular form of starch called Jesus. Oh, I read the AI answer. Fuck, my bad. Okay, no. Starch and fiber both become like carbs. Your body processes very different ways. Can you digest starch, or is it like fiber and you can't really? Okay, it is. It does get broken down. Okay.
Lower conscientious people. We also know that conscientiousness is profoundly genetic. Maybe 50% of conscientious behavior is accounted for entirely by the genes.
Is 50%? Is 0.5 on the heritability thing? Is that considered profoundly genetic? 50% of the variation from one person or other could be explained due to genes. I don't know what's considered profound. That seems like there's a lot of wiggle room environmentally there, but
the rest of it is a little bit mysterious as to how it aggregates.
LOL, please never give nutritional advice again. I still love you though. DZ, what did I just say that was wrong? DZ, let's wait for it. Go ahead. Tell me. We'll all wait here. We'll all sit here and wait. It's the fact that you have to look up if starch is digestible. Okay. I'm so sorry that I don't remember every single fact about every single thing ever. Okay. My bad.
We're not entirely sure how that happens. There seems to be no very dependable way to massively improve conscientiousness with any kind of top-down intervention that we have done before. Having peaceful communities that give you a decent degree of education probably has some effect on that, but seemingly not as big of an effect on how we want. We also know that what your common home environment was, like how you were raised by your parents, it's almost no effect on your conscientiousness as an adult.
If conscientiousness is only 50% heritable, how can your environment have almost no effect? I don't understand what that means, or how he reads conscientiousness. I don't know what that means.
If any effect whatsoever. It's actually a little controversial to say almost no effect.
Well, what about the effect of emotional regulation? If you have higher levels of what we call adverse childhood experiences, your emotional regulation is...
Can you steelman Evil Mike's position on food affordability? Do you believe it is wrong, or is there merit to saying it is bad choices being made by low-income families? It's correct to say that it's bad choices. That is correct, but it's also a little bit simplistic. Like again, there are things like it's a good choice because of affordability and availability. Like if you made it more expensive, then they would probably buy something different, right?
Lower than that of someone who has less adverse
Are
childhood.
those studies controlling for genetics? Because almost none of
How
these
do you
studies
emotional regulation? If you have
on your conscientiousness as an adult, if any effect whatsoever. It's actually a little controversial to say almost no effect.
Well, what about the effect of emotional regulation?
I don't understand how. I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself. How can you say almost no effect if it's 0.5 heritable?
If you have higher levels of what we call adverse childhood experiences.
How is conscientiousness even heritable? I mean, you would do a survey of a ton of different people, and then you would try to control for some variables, as many as you reasonably can, or as many as reasonable to control for. Twin studies are usually the best, and then you try to see like, well, how much of the variation from this trait from one person to the next can be explained by inheritance from parents versus what can't be explained by, right? Is your heritability, yeah.
Your emotional regulation is lower than that of someone who has less adverse
Are
childhood.
those studies controlling for genetics? Because almost none of these
How
studies
do you control for genetics?
twin and adoption studies. Because when
I
you
don't
look at the
know
twin and
of this,
adoption
but-
literature, a lot of that stuff completely disappears.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it specifically within the twin world, but knowing
Man, are there a multitude of high sample size, like more than 10 adoption studies that go into the heritability of conscientiousness? There might be. I'm curious. That seems that seems very challenging. That you have if somebody has a link to these, I'd be curious. Also, keep in mind, unfortunately, twin studies are really nice because we can take identical, like twin adoption studies, because we can take an identical genetic foundation and separate them into different environments. But twins tend to exist in highly exceptional environments, which can make things challenging as well. Like if you're adopting a child, it's such an atypical family or relationship versus just a child born into an ordinary family, right? It's very challenging to do studies like this. It's just challenging, yeah.
that you just said, it's 50% genetic and 50%
Roughly.
something else that we don't know.
Sure.
What does that mean for the fact that those who are poor are more likely to be obese?
Yeah. So I can split it, I can simplify the matter. Two kind of different kinds of poor people. One kind of poor person has all of this kind of social burden foisted upon them, and they're doing their goddamn best. They're scrimping and saving. They're thinking long term. They're concerned about their health. They're concerned about their body weight. They're concerned about the choices of what kind of foods they're putting in their bodies, how it affects other things. They're trying to raise their children in a very diligent way. They don't spend excessively, and so on and so forth. Like I said earlier, those people don't tend to stay poor over the long term. Sometimes, through a variety of unfortunate circumstances, they stay poor. Like someone who's incredibly conscientious, but has an incredibly financially burdensome medical condition who continues to stay poor and conscientious, which is a tragedy, obviously. But there's another kind of poor person who is also poor, but exhibit very low trait conscientiousness, which means they just have a 1 day, 1 minute at a time, what I feel like doing, massive bias in their thinking and in their choice structure.
The emotional regulation of it.
Sure. The emotional regulation presupposes there is a desire to regulate emotion. There are two ways emotional dysregulation could present itself. One,
Yeah, I mean, the ability, whether or not they want to, is a
sure,
different
but,
thing.
but conscientiousness speaks to wants. People who are conscientious but have, let's say, profound attention deficit disorder, know they need to be making better choices. Desperately pray to God they can make better choices, but just keep getting off track because they can't maintain their attention and have a high degree of impulsivity. People who have low trait conscientiousness don't care about making good choices nearly as much as they care about what's going to be fun and pleasurable for me to do now. And it's not even a value judgment. Fuck it, YOLO is a way of life, bro. And it's a decent way of life, but it's going to lead to different outcomes. So if I am a poor person in the United States, I have a high degree of trait conscientiousness, I can easily make a variety of choices that will entirely prevent me from becoming obese in many circumstances. There's another component to this, which I'm excising for now, about food drive, which is also mostly genetic, which is critical to this discussion. I'll leave that for just a little later. If you're poor and someone tells you, well, I don't expect you to be fit because it's impossible for you, and you have high trait conscientiousness and you've thought this through for like 15 minutes, you're going to be like, Planet Fitness costs $10 a month. It's also irrelevant to go to a gym because you could do bodyweight exercises and have a high degree of physical activity for free anywhere. any food you eat, you could just eat less of and become however much body weight you want. And if you're struggling with hunger, you can buy less palatable, actually more expensive foods and buy basic beans and rice like Abuela raised you to eat. And all of a sudden, like, you just don't overeat that because it's just not that good. We've seen that one of the sole explanatory factors for the rise in obesity is the ubiquity of high palatability foods everywhere, super cheap. If you don't access those, it saves you money and you become more fit. So the actual impediments to achieving fitness and health to poor people essentially almost don't exist. If you have trait conscientiousness very highly, if you have low trait conscientiousness, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor because you're just going to YOLO the shit. Whatever you feel like eating, that's what goes in. And McDonald's just tastes better. Now, you're not getting spaghetti, steak, and shrimp because you're not a rich motherfucker. But you can afford very high palatability foods, chips and soda and ice cream. That's all very affordable to you, and that's what you want. And if people
I feel like as an example where the environmental factors could play heavily into it, though, right? Like if you're growing up and you're in a wealthier environment, like you're not even exposed to getting into the habit of buying all those like horrible things, right? Your parents are probably feeding you better food. You're probably more into the rhythm of eating and buying healthier, better food, or having people that can prepare it for you. I would agree in like broad strokes, but in the specifics here, I don't know.
say, like, what about your fitness and health? Generally, your opinion is like, and that's a totally fine opinion, but it's going to lead to some kind of outcomes. If you're ultra wealthy, you're in low conscientiousness, there's a high probability you're going to end up exactly as fat as someone who is poor and low conscientious. There was a study that
I feel like you're less likely to. You might still have a higher likelihood of winding up fat as somebody who is in your same environment with higher conscientiousness, but I feel like you are. I feel like it's less likely. It must be, right? Unless they can cite particular research or something towards this. But
it came out about 10 years ago. I studied food deserts. I don't like that term. It highly insults people who've actually dealt with real food insecurity. You go to the Soviet Union in 1988, that's a fucking food desert, right? Mm-hmm. And they took a look at the data and they said that people who had vehicles, access to vehicles to leave the food desert to go to mega conglomerate grocery stores became and were fatter than the people that didn't, because they had the same low conscientiousness and not a distinct desire to be fit and healthy and lean. So when they went to the bigger mega grocery stores, they just got even better versions of the same fun snacks that they had slightly less access to inside the food deserts. So a person's individual proclivity of how they want to eat and what they want to put in their bodies, whether or not or to what degree they care about it, is something that's not discussed much in the medical community. Because again, like, first of all, what are you going to do about it? Telling low conscientious people they have to care about their body weight and their health and think forward, it's usually very ineffective. It's insanely pedantic and paternalistic, and doctors usually have a very realistic approach. I'm going to try to help you in the way that I can. And if I tell you to eat healthy and you don't listen to me, we're going to medications. Mm-hmm.
So what's Evil Mike's prescription for the low conscientious people, as he said? He hasn't yet, but the answer is you make it less palatable, and you do that with taxes, right?
Is just the only thing I can do. So when you take a look at the two sort of very artificial groupings of poor people, if you have high conscientiousness and you're poor, all of the systemic factors keeping you obese seem to disappear almost entirely. And if you are of low conscientiousness, whether you're rich or poor, and you have a high food drive, you're going to be obese 99 times out of 100.
Eliminating highs and lows.
Really, 99 out of 100? There's no shot that's true. But I don't have any research right now to agree or disagree with that. But
50th percentile people. They're the ones we're talking about when we're talking about generalizations. So why are we talking about high conscientiousness versus low?
Yeah, because
let's talk about middle.
Sure.
Where the majority of people live.
Yeah. Because
within one standard deviation.
Totally. That's a great question. On average.
Is that true? Are most people within one standard deviation on the middle of all of the big five traits, or do people tend to cluster on the sides? I don't know what the answer is. Average distribution of people across 5-factor traits. The geographic distribution of scores in our sample. Okay, so conscientiousness tends to cluster around high conscientiousness. Most people tend to be. I wonder what the sample size is. or not. I don't know if I said sample size. I wonder who they're sampling. Who's the cohort here? Explainable AI for psychological program for digital footprints. Case study, big 5% presenting data. 6,400 people. 2 popular XA methods, real extraction, counterfactual, from financial transactions data. First, we demonstrate a global rule extraction. I don't even know what this. Okay, I don't know. All right.
On average, poor people tend to exhibit lower trade conscientiousness than richer people.
Which could be due to social factors.
Maybe,
as you said.
Maybe. The social factors are definitely a component of that. Mm-hmm. But we know that genetic factors are a massive component of that as well. And whether or not they're social or genetic, the conscientiousness is such a huge effector variable for everything else that that's kind of where the rubber meets the road.
So are you saying we need to target the conscientiousness of people in order to actually make change, not actually the food deserts, not what they're eating? The trait is what we need to figure out ways to impact. Is that the takeaway of you?
No.
Wouldn't it be relative to deviation from the mean? So necessarily the average person will always be within one standard deviation regardless of the metric. I haven't taken a stats class yet. We'll do that after our macro class. But there are different types of distributions, right? So, because you can have a, like, I don't even know what they're called, but like this is like a normal distribution, right? But can't you have like is this called a bimodal distribution, right? Can't you have other types of distributions where I don't even know what like a standard deviation or whatever would look like or what that would even mean? Or if you can have standard deviations not on abnormal distributions, I have no idea. I don't know.
I think that's a fine idea. My contention is that if we target food deserts, if we target big evil food companies, we are not targeting the core onus of why obesity is higher in poor people. And the reason it's higher in poor people is a two-factor situation. This really explains, I think, probably 80+% of the variance.
This is your theory.
Hypothesis. Yeah, theory is a gravitation, evolution, etc. Much lower than theory.
Right.
I don't know if theory and all that shit is even used anymore. Like theory and law. I don't know if they do that anymore in science as much. I feel like we just research shit and keep iterating on things. But
I say theory in the non-scientific way.
Yes, stop doing that.
Yes.
So the biggest determinants of your body weight and proclivity to obesity in the modern world is going to be a two-factor system. Your trait conscientiousness degree of that and your degree of food drive. How much do you like food? How much do you like to eat? How big of a deal is tasty food to you? You no doubt have some friends that like they'll eat like 3.5 chips and they're like, that's pretty good. They just sit there. You're like, the fuck? I get into some chips. I eat the whole bag.
Also, if you're designing a quiz to generate a Big 5 score, why would you design the quiz to give a non-normal distribution of scores? I don't know. I'm not sure. Couldn't we imagine quizzes that generate non-normal distributions? Like, let's say I quiz chat on a scale from 1 to 10. How much do you enjoy like eating shit? I feel like that would be a bimodal distribution, right? With like a ton of answers around 0 and 1, or just as around 0, and then like the other answers would cluster around like 8, 9, and 10 or something. Right? No? I feel like we could probably imagine or envision other things like that, maybe?
Food is amazing. Not everyone is like that, right?
Sure.
So if you have someone who's a relatively low trait conscientiousness, and they have
one standard deviation is by definition where 68% of data points cluster, no matter the distribution. Okay.
high degree of food drive, even if they're poor, they can still afford to be grotesquely obese. No problem. In the modern context, back in the day, that was not the case. If you have someone who's wealthy and has any given food drive, they definitely have more of an arsenal to shoot. They can buy foods that are more filling, but are still tasty, like very Trader Joe's, Whole Foods type of shit.
Yeah.
That definitely has an effect. But they have to have some impetus to go buy those
Also,
foods and give a shit.
pharmaceuticals. Because access to pharmaceuticals, especially these days, is a big
Just
difference.
recently, for sure. Just recently. Because like just 2 years ago, no one knew about Ozempic and no one even used it.
Well, bariatric surgery.
Fuck. If data have a very skewed distribution, then the standard deviation will be grossly inflated and is not a good measure of variability to use. As we've shown, occasionally transformation of the data so a long transformation will render the distribution more symmetrical. Alternatively, quote the interquartile range. There's a commonly held misapprehension that for normally distributed data, one uses the mean, and for non-normally distributed data, one uses the median. Alas, it's not so. If the data are normally distributed, the mean and the median will be close. If they are not normally distributed, then both the mean and the median may give useful information. Consider a variable that takes the value of 1 for males and 0 for females. This is clearly not normally distributed. However, the mean gives the proportion of males in the group, whereas the median merely tells us which group contained more than 50% of the people. Similarly, the mean from ordered categorical variable can be more useful than the median if the ordered categories can be given meaningful scores. For example, a lecture might be rated as 1 poor to 5 excellent. The usual statistic for summarizing the result would be the mean. In the situation where there is a small group at one extreme of the distribution, for example, annual income, then the median will be more representative of the distribution. My data must have values greater than 0, and yet the mean and standard deviation are about the same size. That has happened. Okay, all right. All right. My retard wife keeps saying that Ozempic and Wegovy are bad because they are like cheat codes for fat people. Can you give me a killer argument to make her shut up? Yeah, tell her to stop wearing shoes anywhere because you should just develop huge calluses on your feet in order to not cut your feet up where you walk everywhere. Or, I mean, or don't wear clothes and just grow your body hair out more. Or, I mean, there's a million things that we have every day. Tell her to learn how to jog so she doesn't need a car. I mean...
Surgery existed.
Totally. Yeah, that's very extreme situations. Again, most people of low conscientiousness usually are not interested in bariatric surgery because they're like, why the hell would I go do that? It doesn't make sense to them why you would do that because they don't seem to have...
Again, we're talking about low conscientiousness versus the average.
Correct. So again, on average, you have a larger fraction of low conscientiousness people that are poor than are rich.
But the reason...
Conscientiousness, correlation, wealth. Is this even true? What would I look up to find this? Okay. New psychology research pinpoints personality traits related to wealth accumulation. Consciousness plays a crucial role in money management and wealth accumulation, according to news. Good one. Review. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, personality and wealth. Okay, 3,240 adults in the UK completed a Big Five personality test and reported on their property wealth, savings and investments, and their physical valuable items. We also had data on their age, education, household income, and gender. Correlation regression showed the demographics of age and income were expected clearest correlates with wealth. Okay. Obviously, conscientiousness was positively, and agreeableness, neuroticism, and extroversion were negatively associated with savings and investments. Okay. So more conscientious means you are more likely to be wealthy, and more agreeableness, neuroticism, or extroversion means you're less likely to be wealthy. Okay. And then the data pointed clearly to conscientiousness is the most important personality trait in wealth accumulation. Implications of these results, as well as limitations of the study, are discussed. What level of correlation are we talking here? Jesus Christ. Who even is this guy? Holy shit, what is this AIDS link tree? Oh my god. Imagine link treeing to another link tree. Communism, music, and arsenal enthusiast. Holy cringe. Who is this guy? Hit him up with the brown face emoji. Got him. Okay. Okay. Conscious associated with work and career success. For example, Duckworth and we are found that greater consciousness was associated with higher lifetime earnings after taking into account education and cognitive variables beyond the role conscious career success, higher earnings also. Consciousness to be positive associated with net worth. Oh wait, what is this? Is this just like a lit review? To what extent do personal in all completed? In this study, we were interested in the extent to which personality. Okay. Oh no, wait. Is this just the intro? Okay. All right, results. Okay, conscientiousness. So this is correlation with, I don't know how to read this. Am I retarded? So like how much is like property, wealth, and conscientiousness correlated? That's what this means, right? And then 2 would be like, how much is savings and investments correlated with conscientiousness, right? That's what this means. Okay, I got it. I gotcha. Okay, if it was 1.0, that would mean that the entire variance is explained with conscientiousness. If it's 0.18, that means that 18% of the variance is explained with conscientiousness. Or am I looking at that a little bit too narrowly? Okay. Okay, so extroversion, agreeableness, consciousness, neuroticism, and openness. So conscientiousness is a big one, and then neuroticism seems to be the other one that hurts you a lot. Okay. The p-value being lower indicates higher correlation. No, it's p-value is higher is a higher correlation, I think. Okay.
And for why they're
correct. So again, on average, you have many more, a larger fraction of low conscientiousness people that are poor than are rich.
But the reason for why.
Let's line this. Hold on. Okay, the correlation coefficient ranges from -1 to 1. An absolute value of exactly 1 implies that a linear equation describes the relation between x and y perfectly, with all data points lying on a line. The correlation sign is determined by the regression slope. A value of +1 implies that all data points lie on a line for which y increases as x increases, whereas a value of -1 implies a line where y increases while x decreases. A value of 0 implies that there is no linear dependency between the variables. Okay, so I'm going to draw this and just not be correct. Okay, so if I have like, wait, okay. So the oh, fuck. Is there a difference between p-value and like your in your line of regression, or are those the exact same thing, right? So if I theoretically had a data set and the data set looked like this, my p-value would be like 0.998 or something, right? Oh, wait, hold on. No. P-value versus R squared. Wait. Wait, that last thing wasn't a p-value then. These things aren't p-values. These are your correlations. So these are your R-squareds. Okay, so if I have a, okay, so if my correlation is 0.2 or whatever, for consciousness is 0.18 for your property wealth, although I imagine this doesn't measure personal income, just household income, is 7. Although that almost is not that, or this just has a less effect here than extroversion and neuroticism. Interesting. But okay. So, if something is like something with a, with 0.2 or whatever, we would expect to see it significantly less correlated than this, right? I don't know if I could even draw one of these. Like something like this would be like a 0, right? Like this red thing would be, there's like, because the if you were to draw the line of best fit or whatever, it would look like this. But something like this maybe might look a little bit more like this or whatever would be something bullshit. I don't know, something like that. Okay, never mind. I can't ask these questions for chat because everybody says a fucking different thing. I just need to take a look at this later. We'll do it later.
We don't yet know.
We know some of it, but we don't even need to postulate that because we have this thing of poverty causes obesity. That's the notion. Actually, a combination of high food drive and low conscientiousness cause obesity.
Food
and
drive.
it just so happens that people who are less wealthy on average also have lower trait conscientiousness.
It's like
I guess my issue is that conscientiousness was not a huge, it wasn't like a massive thing there, right? If it was 0.18, and I feel like he's leaning into this, unless there's other research he's referring to there, but.
Situation with vitamin D, that those who have lower vitamin D levels have higher rates of certain illnesses. But then supplementing the vitamin D past the norm doesn't actually reduce the outcomes of.
So is P the standard deviation from the expected value for the data set? No, I believe that P just measures the likelihood that, I think your P-value measures your likelihood that the true value falls within the range of what you've measured, I think. So if you give like a, so like if you measure something at like 0.8, I think that, don't you always give a range with this? And the range, I don't know how you notate this, but it's like maybe you have like 0.7 dot dot dot. There's a standard notation for this that I don't know or whatever. And you say that like P is greater than 95%. I think what you're saying here is that you're, I think there's a 95% chance that the actual value that you were trying to measure here is within this data set. It is encompassed here, I think. what you're talking about is which we're talking about is confidence interval. P versus confidence interval. Oh boy. A p-value represents the probability of observing data as extreme as what was measured. Assuming the null. I don't know. I can't read an AI thing. Fuck! Get this shit out of here. Holy fuck! Please get this fucking shit out of here. Okay. To determine whether a null hypothesis formulated before the performance of the study is to be accepted or rejected. In exploratory studies, p-values enable the recognition of any statistically noteworthy findings. Confidence intervals provide information about a range in which the true value lies with a certain degree of probability, as well as the direction and strength of the demonstrated effect. So it's clearly should be drawn about this plausible. Okay, so your p-value is applied to a confidence interval, or I don't know. Okay. You know what? Stats will be next, all right?
Of those diseases. So much in the same way, when we talk about food drive, and you're talking about someone as that being one of the two variables that decide whether or not someone is obese, food drive is so impacted by social situations. One, if you're depressed, which if you're poor, there's a chance that you're not getting help for your mental health situations because we don't have great access to that in America. If you're poor, you have worse likelihood of developing adverse childhood events that lead to mental health conditions. You are likely to have been targeted by big food companies in their advertising, which has been proven through research for addictive products like ultra-processed foods. Cigarette companies will specifically target their advertisements based on zip code, based on
Yeah, that's curious. I have a reason for why. Those
Is he going to say there's a reason why they target those people?
people like those things better.
right.
They buy them more.
Correct. And that could be an education component. That could be a genetic component. It's probably a multifactorial component. But why I find that interesting is because once those people are hooked on the product in a way where, not that that food is addictive, and yes, it's true, it is addictive. And once you consume ultra-processed foods, you're constantly hungry, not satiated, you're craving all that stuff. But also, once you become obese, your epigenetics change of the fat cells. There was actually a recent study that came out, Eric Topol shared it on Twitter, where, again, in mice, so I have to give that prerequisite.
92% genetic similarity to humans. So you can extrapolate.
But still,
Genetic similarities doesn't mean anything. Like how you measure a genetically similar versus dissimilar thing is like it's like I think it's like an arbitrary roller coaster of like random shit. Like I think like depending on how you measure it, isn't it like a banana is like 80% genetically similar to a human? I read an article on this once. Or 60% of our genes have a recognizable counterpart in the banana genome. It's just that like genetic similarity, like we use animals because a lot of the biological systems in their body and a lot of the hormones and proteins and everything are shared between like humans and animals, and that like there's a lot of similar functionality, there's a lot of similar proteins, there's a lot of similar hormones. That's why you compare it. The idea that like, well, it's because of 82% genetic similarity doesn't really map onto anything meaningful, I don't think. Yeah, but
I generally don't like jumping from mice to humans, but it is not illogical to see how the creation of fat cells for storage then
wait, being obese changes your genes. So if you're skinny, become fat. Does that pass in your epigenetic changes are changes that happen outside of your genetics. There are biological changes that happen in your body once you become fat that I think don't ever go away. I don't know how true the science is on this, but it's like the idea that I think that you actually create more fat cells that take less energy and are more easier filled. If you lose the weight, those fat cells are still there. They're just not holding on to as much mass. So that you have a higher proclivity to become overweight in the future if you've been overweight, lost your weight, than a person who's never been overweight.
can impact your behavior as years go on and the difficulty of escaping from those circumstances. So if you're a child that is born in an area that's poor, these are the things that are likely to happen, and they're not going to happen in every circumstance. Worse education, more targeting by big food companies, worse social situation from a mental health component, high likelihood of being fed ultra processed foods by parents, which then raise your risk of being obese, then sets you up as an adult to regain that weight, even if you try and lose it, in a much easier way than someone who never had that issue that grew up wealthy. And then you're saying here that the only reason is because of the trait conscientiousness?
Definitely not. I was explicit
But
that
those
it was
two,
not the only
the
reason.
food drive and the trait,
They probably account for, I think, something like 80% of the variance. Yeah.
over what we just said.
Yeah,
I
so-
wish he would source that, or what does he mean when he says that? I wish there was like a study that I could point to that he's talking about there. But
all the other stuff you mentioned is insanely influenced by trait conscientiousness as the baseline variable. The reason that people have, let's say, a more crime-ridden environment is because more people around are low conscientiousness. The tie between conscientiousness and criminality is insanely high correlation. So some of those same people are more likely to be criminally prone. They're less likely to take care of their communities, leaving trash everywhere. They're more likely to make rapid choices based on desire and thus make you next to them the proxy target of big food advertisement. Big food didn't try to target poor people just because. You'd much
they have
rather
a higher
target rich
proclivity to
people
buy
with
it.
every product you sell because they have more money to spend. Curious why they would target the poor, because there are some large fraction of them that are low conscientiousness to begin with that want these sorts of things. They are attractors for them, and they are the progenitors of many of these bad circumstances. Trauma doesn't come from the ether. Trauma comes from people being nasty around you. Most nastiness in humans is because people have a high degree of impulsivity and just kind of do what they want. That is the same variable of low conscientiousness, basically in some large component, not totally, describing why things are the way they are with very poor communities, let's say in the United States.
I think the difference in our hypothesis is that I see how you've gotten to see such a strong correlation between low conscientiousness and outcomes in obesity.
Causation.
That's what I was going to get to. I see the very strong correlation that exists there, but at the same time, I see the very strong correlation as well as poor education, difficult circumstances, all those variables that are also very strongly correlated. And I want to know how you jump to the causation without having a trial that impacts the trait and then seeing a better outcome. When you said that trait can't really be changed.
Yeah. Behavioral genetics, twin and adoption studies, genealogy, heritability studies that show that your genetics is profoundly important as to how your life lays out in front of you. Everything else becomes usually secondary unless it is extremely, extremely different from the norm, which definitely explains some of the variation with really nasty growing up circumstances.
I know that we'll never get there because humanity is going to destroy itself, or Trump and fucking Dr. Oz and RFK are going to kill all of us with some retarded shit, raw milk first. But I think it would be so interesting to see a conversation. And both of these guys are smart enough to do this. It would be so interesting for these guys to say, hey, let's have a conversation about this topic here. And let's bring the research. Let's like actually have the research, and let's be responsible for like reading the studies before we come, and then bring them and talk about them. There is a really common misconception that's said by every dipshit on the internet that's never read a single study in their entire life, that you can find a study for anything. You can find support for any opinion you want in every fucking study. No, only retards who have never read research ever in their life say that. The reality is, in most heavily researched fields, if it's like some far out there topic where there's like 2 papers on it, sure, whatever, the literature generally points in a direction. Or when people say that like, oh, the literature is very unclear here, usually what they mean is like, we don't know if this variable is like 0.7 or 0.79 or whatever. Very rarely is there like diametrically opposed reasons on a particular thing that there's so much research you're writing about. So it would be nice to just like bring all the research, like let's just bring it in and chat about it. And these guys, they're both smart enough to do this. It's not beyond either of them. It would be so much more interesting to see that rather than evil Mike make a claim and then good Mike make a counterclaim, and we're using words like a lot, big, right? Because when I looked up what I'm pretty sure he's referencing, that study about conscientiousness and at least trying to measure its effect on household wealth, conscientiousness was the biggest factor. That was correct. But the value was 0.18, right? which is big, but the way that he's talking, he makes it sound like, holy fuck, it's like 90% like explanatory for your, you know, what the level of household wealth here. You think it's like way bigger than that study, at least the one that I found, unless there's other research he's referring to, but that would also be nice if they were discussing the research and then we'd just be like looking at it, you know? Aren't people still unsure if creatine causes balding? No. I don't think anybody thinks that it does. I don't think there's ever been any research pointing in that direction. There was like one study like 20 years ago and some people freak out over it, but I don't believe that anybody believes that right now.
But not as much as many people would think. So if you ever dip into the behavioral genetics literature, and I encourage everyone listening to give it a shout, don't expect to be very cheery at the end of that dive. It's a real thing, man. It's a real thing.
I certainly believe it to be a real thing at the extremes, at the highs and lows. But I think when you look at 75% of the population, I can't imagine it being a causative factor to the degree that another random variable is.
I gotcha.
So, and it sucks because they don't have the research in front of them, but like Good Mike, I would say intuitions in this kind of data are very scary because you can go very, very wrong very quickly. And I don't even want to say that Good Mike's intuitions are correct, but I don't feel like I've seen anything that makes the correlations that Evil Mike is talking about anywhere near as strong as he's saying there. And I'm even confused by his statements earlier, unless I am missing some foundational piece of knowledge where he says that like it's almost impossible for environment to change this trait that I just told you had a heritability of 0.5. Wait, what? If only 50% of the change from one person to the next is explained by genetics, it sounds like you could have a profound effect with environmental change here. No? Like, you know.
So I'll cite a couple of offhand random studies just for illustrative purposes. There's at least one study which showed that past the age of about 12 or 13, your common home environment where you grew up has almost no effect on your eating habits, because they did it with twin and adoption research, and they found
Twin adoption research, home environment impact eating habits. Oh, fuck. Sorry. The next stage for me, being a not fucking retarded person, piece of shit, would actually be learning how to use Google Scholar. Okay, 2020, cited by 83 people. I don't know how important the citations are. I feel like it's probably pretty important. This has a lot more citations, but it's from 2001. How about we do since 20... if I want the current date, do I do since 2024 or 2025? Give me the past 10 years. And then sort by relevance? I don't fucking know. Fuck me. My thing went away. I don't care. Okay, hold on. 1986, cringe. Okay, whatever. Let's try this one. Centered genetic family studies and a decade of GWA studies have dramatically increased our understanding of the genetic architecture of common obesity, eating behavior, and their mutual associations. However, this increasing knowledge also clearly demonstrated the challenges, especially when trying to understand the mechanisms of how genes affect BMI and other obesity indicators. BMI is shown to be a highly heritable trait, but the heritability changes over the life course. What is this? Okay. The abstract is obesity has dramatically increased during the last decades and is currently one of the most serious global health problems. We present a hypothesis that obesity is a neurobehavioral disease. Having a strong genetic background mediated largely by eating behavior and is sensitive to the macro environment. We study this hypothesis from the perspective of genetic research. Genetic family and genome-wide association studies have shown, well, that body mass index is a highly heritable and polygenetic trait. New genetic variation of BMI emerges after early childhood. Candidate genes of BMI notably express in brain tissue, supporting that this new variation is related to behavior. Obesogenic environments, I'm guessing those are environments that lead to people being obese. At both childhood, family, and societal levels reinforce the genetic susceptibility to obesity. Genetic factors have a clear influence on macronutrient intake and appetite-related eating behaviors. Results on the gene by diet interactions and obesity are mixed, but emerging evidence suggests that eating behavior traits partly mediate the effects of genes on BMI. However, more rigorous perspective. Okay. This might not be what I'm looking for exactly. Does anybody know what studies he's citing? Like, does he have a video where he talks about it, or? Well, here, heritability increases after early childhood and is highest in early adulthood. This actually sounds like what he's talking about. So heritability increasing means that the variance in obesity from one person to the next has a higher explanation based on your genetic background than it does on your environmental background, or at least coming from your parents. I think heritability here. So this might be in reference to what he's talking about, but I wonder what the actual number is. What is this? What are we looking at here? Is this just like a article, review article, abstract, obesity, health risks? Obesity associated not only with multiple diseases, such as diabetes, coronary heart disease, musculoskeletal, but also. Okay, the oldest and most common used indicator of obesity is BMI, which is calculated as weight divided by. Okay, so this is basically a lit review that's supporting a hypothesis that they have, and they're going to incorporate prior literature in order to make that argument. Okay. Sci-Hub. All right. This is one of the most famous studies on this topic. 1990, bro? 1990? Are those even the same types of humans? Okay. This doesn't go by age, though, I don't think, right? This just looks at, like, this isn't talking about differences in heritability as your age changes, right? I am finding this. B, I hope you're mad. Okay, figure one. The change of the proportions of BMI variation explained by additive, genetic, shared environment, and unique environmental factors from infancy to old age in pooled twin data. Okay, so according to this fig, up to about age 17 or 19, is this the explainer for, wait, the change of proportions explained by additive, genetic, shared environmental, and unique environmental factors from infancy to old age and pooled data. Okay, fuck, I don't actually know what each of these things means. I don't know, because I'm retarded. Okay. The most commonly used approach to estimate genetic and environmental variation is to utilize the information in monozygotic and dizygotic twins. Monozygotic twins are virtuously identical at the, virtuously or virtually? Or is it like a virtue to be identical? Are virtuously identical at the gene sequence level, whereas dizygotic twins share half of their genetic variation, as with ordinary siblings. If raised together, both types of twins are assumed to share the same amount of environmental variables or variation, which can include the influence of the childhood home, as well as, for example, common friends. This allows decomposing the trait variation into genetic variation, environmental variation shared by co-twins, and environmental variation unique to each twin. In the simple twin models, the unique environmental variation also includes measurement error. When studying BMI or other traits changing over a lifetime, a special advantage in studying twins is that they are always at the same age. Because of these major advantages, most of the information on the influence of genetic factors on human characteristics before the genome-wide association studies became available were based on twin studies, and the twin design still offers a cost-effective shortcut to estimate the total genetic variation. Further genetic twin studies allow for estimating environmental variation shared and unshared by co-twins, and thus provides an understanding of the role of environmental factors, which is not possible in GWA studies. So explain what I'm reading here. Is this saying that the difference between weight of a person who's 50 years old is not explained basically at all by shared environment in childhood, is explained quite a bit by genetic variation, and becomes more and more explained by the unique environment that they have? But the genetic variation here, I'm assuming that additive genetic is just genetic, is relatively similar throughout the life. Like it looks like it is about like 0.6, 0.7 or whatever. Hey, debate that. Hassan retard. He DM'd me and I said, sure thing, whenever you want. And that was it. What's unique environment referring to? After you've left a common household, I believe. Where is he getting this idea that that it's like significantly different how much your environment accounts for differences in BMI before a certain age? Does anybody have a link to this study, whatever he's referencing here? This doesn't go by age, does it? I don't think it does. Fuck me. Capacity of marine species. Okay. Does it just give me a definition of heritability? Oh, it is. Fuck. My bad. I thought I was linking the study over here. Okay. Well, whatever. Okay. Don't care. Fuck it. What claim are you fact-checking with friends?
Because they did it.
I just want to know. I wish the effect size or the magnitude or whatever you would call it, they should give it in. If you're doing an academic talk like this, it's important. Like if I were to say a huge percentage of people will commit crime based on whether or not they were a fan of the Backstreet Boys or NSYNC. Like if I say something like that and the percentage is like 15%, that is a huge percentage of people. That was way higher than I would expect, but that's a lot different than like 95%, right? So I don't like it when we're saying like a large percentage of people, a huge percentage, but like no numbers are being given. That drives me crazy because I don't know, because that would significantly impact how we should feel about what's being said, but it's never given. The magnitude or the effect size or whatever is never given, which drives me crazy. But